inspiring story. Thanks for telling it to us. Now we're going to move on to the last presentation. I'm going to ask Carl Krieber and Orlando Bonestella to come up and make the presentation.
We'll get there, Enzo.
All right.
The award for injured worker activism. First of all, let me just thank very briefly the Labour Council of Metropolitan Toronto, the Workers' Health and Safety Centre, for including injured workers in your family. There's many injured workers here today. There's a wave. And I just want to take a few seconds to welcome the Iranian-Canadian Congress and the Iranian-Canadian community. This community is extremely concerned about health and safety because one of their members was killed on the job tending a gas station in a tragic situation, and she had been in this country for only 1 year, so we keep hearing about stories of immigration and dangers, and the Iranian-Canadian Congress has been very active in promoting health and safety and education, and we welcome them to our family. So thank you very much. Arsalan Kanamayapur, who's the president. Sudek Gassemi, she's got a lot of energy in organizing. They invited two recent MPs, Majid Jahari and Ali Esasi. They were trying to come, they couldn't make it, but they attempted very courageously to be here. But we have the NDP candidate for Willowdale, Pujan Tabasine Nejad. Supporting the recipient of the award tonight, but they are very concerned and want to continue working with us, and we work with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Orlando, and I guess it's my turn now, Maryam. First of all, I just want to take this opportunity to thank particularly Fortunato Rao, who's given the injured workers an opportunity to get on Labour News and tell our story, not only in Ontario, but right across the world. That's where they are. So thank you very much, and congratulations. It's my honor and privilege, and from my heart, to introduce the recipient of the Eddie Cauchy Award for Injured Workers Activism. Let me tell you something, when we heard about the stories and Labour's involvement, this is an individual who is an activist on behalf of workers who have no union behind them. And it's not just workers in Ontario, but it's for those workers who have no coverage right across the country and around the world. And that's the message that she brings to anyone that she can get her hands on to talk to. It's hard, it's very hard. I've been known to talk a lot at times, but I will try and make a very short introduction, as Maryam does so often. I just want to simply say this. Maryam is Ontario's principal advocate for universal coverage of all workers. I know in many cases, and I'm going to ask anyone here that's on the Health and Safety Committee to give me your card so I can give it to Maryam, because once she finds out the issue of coverage, and she spots you, she'll come after you. There are many people that aren't aware of all that. It's one out of 4 workers in our province, just in our province, are not protected by our compensation system. And I recall on many occasions when Maryam sits with our organization, whether it's with the board or the ministry, she's there particularly to talk about workers that have no coverage, migrant workers, anyone that has no coverage. And she's very passionate when she addresses those very particular issues. whether it's with the board, the government, or anyone that she can lay her hands on to talk to. She doesn't want anyone else to go through the pain and disruption she went through. I know it's very difficult to talk about, but when I heard Maryam's story, I could understand where her passion really comes from. It not only affected her, it affected her family, it affected her community. And I congratulate you for doing the job that you're doing on that, Maryam. That's been a motivation behind her activism for over 15 years. She's spoken to ministers. Like I said, once she gets that target boy, she's right there. And she won't let go until she is heard. But she needs our help, because her fight is our fight. We, as an injured worker organization, we're a nonprofit. We're considered, I guess, in the long run, that you can say we're just a small little group. When you think about this small little group of volunteers and the impact it has, not just on organized workers, but also on unorganized workers in this province, with the changes that we're trying to make. And Maryam's contribution is to all those workers in this province. She's been active with the Women of Inspiration and Injured Workers Group, and leads the overnight. I don't know how many of you, when you hear about June 1st, Injured Workers Day, is where we come to Queen's Park. Not just injured workers, labor, all our supporters come out that day. But the night before, that's organized by Maryam. And she wants the Women of Inspiration or anyone else to join her in a vigil to stay overnight. And there have been some times where it's rained overnight where they had to. But one thing I'm always curious about, Maryam, I know you carry a message with a little umbrella, but is it Mary Poppins you're trying to portray? Because your message on that umbrella is very clear and very powerful. She's part of, as I mentioned, the Ontario Network of Injured Workers Groups, which is, again, as I mentioned, an organization that I've been with for over 25 years. Member at IWC. Also with the OVL and the Iranian Canadian Congress. All these groups are here today, and we share proudly in her recognition. Last but not least is her family and friends. Since Maryam came on board, when I say on board, when she found out who we were and she wanted to talk about the issue of coverage, no better person than Maryam to talk about it, we managed to corral her daughter, Nikki, to become the youth rep of the Ontario Network of Injured Workers. It gives me great pleasure. I'm very proud to call Maryam Nazemi to receive the award.
Something says boom, 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 it's my heart. And if you feel the shake, it's not any earthquake. It's something that is shaking within you. Thank you, fellow guests, family and friends. This is a true honor for me. This award is a representation of not only the blood, sweat, and tears I have put into this noble cause, but what each and every one of you have given to make this province and nation a safer and better place to live in. It was over 2 decades ago I came to Canada as a young, healthy, single woman with great dreams to settle in a country that protects the dignity of all individuals with fairness and equal opportunity for greatness. I had a strong belief and greatest faith that the government of Ontario would provide for me when I wasn't able to work as a result of a massive spinal cord work-related injury as a private Montessori preschool teacher. I endured brutal rejection from all levels of provincial support system. I suffered from immense pain and depression, sleepless nights, loss of my financial assets, feeling abandoned by my own government, faced poverty, which includes not being able to pay for my medication and basic necessities of life. I lost my dignity. I lost my identity and fell way down on the so-called socialist economic ladder, which led me to some of my saddest, darkness, and lowest moments. It is unreal for one to discuss these things happening to her, but this was one of my most moving moments of my life to help me bounce back stronger, to heal myself, to climb back up that ladder I fell from, with a strong mission to make sure all workers of this province are covered, a bright vision for better health and safety and security of all workers nationwide. I truly became a proud Canadian, living in the province of Ontario, to act selflessly, to be a part of this necessary change in our community and our society as a whole. Tonight, I am humbled to use this lofty platform to share my experience and to discuss what appears to be the most pressing, unjustified problem confronting workers in Ontario today and every day, as long as this rooted darkness continues to exist and jeopardize human life. 100 years ago, Meredith said only employers with 3 workers or more should be covered, but expects coverage to expand in the future. Today, 100 years later, fewer workers are covered than 100 years ago. Instead of progress, we have gone back to 1800 years. According to the, 100 years later, the number of non-covered workers has risen. 100 years later, Ontario has one of Canada's lowest coverage rates, 71.7% in 2013. Nearly 2 million people today left protected and vulnerable. 100 years later, the government of Ontario strongly permits these precarious workplaces to conduct affairs that are not safe for the well-being of its workers, and allows employers to get away with operating these unsafe work environments. Among them, banks and other financial institutions, call centers, high-tech manufacturing companies, and even private school employers. These money-making institutions are opting for no protection and letting their workers take the fall is what our labor force is and has been promoting for decades. 100 years later, the sort of poverty of the spirit exists in our government with regards to coverage and protection for the vulnerable workers in our province. Something basic is missing to prevent, to provide, to protect. The richer we have become on a cosmopolitan basis with all these banks, insurance companies, and consumer-based corporations, the poorer we have been behaving on a moral and ethical basis towards the precarious life of a human being. Our workers have been playing the game of a wheel of a fortune and wealth, and always land bankrupt. Since the Meredith Report in 1915, which Ontario's labor system clearly stated the goal was to be comprehensive coverage, all other reports have come out. 1996, Jackson report recommended expanded coverage. The WSIB's own 2002 Brock-Smith report called for all workers to be covered. 2003, University of Toronto, Professor Douglas Hyatt, study of the board conducted full coverage. 2008-2009 economist Mr. McKenzie detailed the benefits of universal coverage for boards' financial reform. 2012 funding review, Mr. Harry Arthur report. 2014 rate framework consultation, Stanley called for review of coverage. And tonight, I am here to speak for unheard of, for 2 million people. It is sad that 100 years later, most of uncovered workers are women that have immigrated to Canada just like me. How does this make us feel? Disappointed? Ashamed? Embarrassed? Name it. According to the book Unsettled Settlers by Sheila Paschal, every year approximately 280,000 permanent residents make Canada their home. It is projected by 2031, all of Canada's population growth will be from immigration, and therefore its labor force growth will also depend on immigration. These workers are facing so many difficulties to integrate. They are so vulnerable, fearful of the future, and desperate to get a job. None of us want them to become a victim of a government's gentle, convenient approach to allow employers to beat up their souls, spirits, and physical ability to become productive. Brothers and sisters, universal coverage is not a political issue. It is an ethical system, and we demand it. That makes economic sense and takes the burden off our healthcare system. Brothers and sisters, I have faith that we will be able to make the government of Ontario start to do the rightful deed to prevent, to provide, and to protect its workers of our province. They have precious life offering to this province. Now I have faith and a strong belief that together we will rise above our fear and passiveness. And together we can make real changes to our workplace health and safety system for all our workers in our province and in Canada for generations to come. For our kids, for our youth, for our neighbors, for our sisters and brothers, for our grandkids. Let us leave the enlightened legacy and footstep for them to follow, not our passiveness. Brothers and sisters, let's show our solidarity with all the workers like me who are not covered under WSIB. Let's make them visible to the eyes of our government. Let's put universal coverage on the table and demand it from Ms. Wayne's government. There is always strength in numbers. Join me in this. Thank you.
that met me. Equality, your motto, your words are all goodwill. And you sided with the banker and left me behind. And I sided by you, and I sided by you. Never saw it coming, oh what a shock. Got sided by you, got sided by you. Never saw it coming, oh what an attack. You hired a bulldozer to run me down. You dug up my road and pulled down my gold. Ripped down my fence, my security bond. You sided with the banker man and put me in the ground. I sided